In this little mini tutorial, I'm going to show you what engraving pens are and how you can use them for a watercolor painting. Now, last week I actually did one, just a quick one, and I shared how I started adding in all the cool little hairs into the leaves. But I've actually completely finished it, and now I've got all those really cool cobwebby effects up in the seed head. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, but first I want to go over at least the two brands of engraving tools that I like. So the first one I ever bought, and this was like a month ago, it is the Resparked brand. And I think, like anything, it was probably around $70 at the time, and then they had a 30% off. And then I think with everything extra that came with it, it might have been around, with taxes and shipping, about $50. In my weekly Zoom classes for all the members, we all got online. Everybody was looking for different engraving pens, and there's some people that are selling them on eBay for much cheaper. Regardless, I can't really give you an actual price. I will share the links, and I am not receiving any compensation for talking about these two engraving pens. Okay, so why did I go with an engraving pen? Well, I used to use a Dremel tool, and I have a couple of videos on that. And even with the cordless Dremel tool, it was really kind of heavy and it was bulky. And then they started coming out with these engraver pens, and what's really cool about them is that they're tiny. And so this is the customizer. This is the first one I got. Came with a lid, and it's very light. In fact, and I'll mention this again, both the Aeromax, which I'll go over in a minute, and the Resparked brand weigh exactly the same. It's 52 grams each, so they're pretty light. It's almost like holding onto like a huge marker or something, so it fits really comfortably in your hand. And the other thing that I liked, and I'm going to move that one to the side, is I got all of these bits to go with it. So you can just pull the bits out. This is what's really cool. They just come right out. They are magnetized, so you push it down and then it just pops right out. And you can do that with all of the bits. You just pick one up and you put it in, you push down, and it holds the bit. You can also, it comes with a little tiny screw. Boy, the screw is really tiny, and it sits up here in the shank. And as long as you can figure out how to get that tiny screw in there, then if you're doing deeper work, I don't know, maybe you're carving on stone or something. I just strictly use this for my watercolor paper. But regardless, you can put the bit in, and then you would just do a quarter turn, and it tightens it and snugs it down even more. I have not noticed at all the need for that, really. But regardless, you get all these tips, and I'll explain about the carbide tip in a minute. But what's really cool is these tips are sanding tips. So you can basically put them in, and you can lightly hold it at an angle, so you can get really cool effects on your watercolor paper. In fact, I used this on my pear, or my peach. So, yep, you just hold it sideways, and then you get that nice fuzzy texture on your peach. So that was kind of fun to do that. So anyhow, easy in, easy out. And then they have a little button here. And these ones are charged with USB-C, and you just plug it in, and then you charge it, and it shows you that it's charging, on the front. Very easy to charge. And it has one button. It has 3 speeds. It has 3, 2, 1. This one, the lowest speed, that one is about 15,000 RPM, and then it goes up to, gosh, I should have wrote this down. It goes up to like 20 and then 30. The thing is it doesn't really matter what the rotation speed is. You just have to play around with them. Take a painting and kind of play around with all the different tips until you find the textures and the speed you like the best. One thing I like about this Resparked one is it comes with just one little carbide tip. This carbide tip is, I had that tightened. That was kind of dumb. This carbide tip, it will make thinner lines, and instead of sanding, it will actually make a solid white line right on the surface of your paper, which is really cool. And it doesn't dig too deep, and you can use it to make little dots. So if I speed it, I'm keeping it on 3. So if I touch it, it'll make dots, which is pretty cool. And this was actually how I made all the little lines. And it won't go through your paper. Now, I use 300-pound paper, but I have tested it on 140-pound paper, and it works fine. As long as you're, have a light touch and you're not pressing down, you can get some pretty cool effects, even on 140-pound. Now, I used to suggest on the demo, with the Dremel tool that you never use it on 140-pound paper because Dremel tools are pretty powerful and you could easily carve right through the paper. But with these little engraving pens, you don't have to worry about that. They're light enough, and as you hold on to them, as long as you have a light touch, you're fine. Okay, so that is the Resparked brand. This one is the Aeromax, and interestingly enough, the Aeromax brand was a little bit cheaper, and it comes with a metal case, and you push it, and all of the bits come out, and your pen is right in the middle. One thing, I got to say this, and I said this on the other little mini engraving tool tutorial I did that showed how I got all these cool hairs in the leaves. So I didn't get to do an in-depth presentation, but the thing about the Aeromax is it's cheaper and you get these sanding bits. So these sanding bits are a little bit bigger than these sanding bits. So these ones are if you want just a wider area sanded. And I've tried them all and I really like them. And on the other side, you actually have all of the bits. And these are 3 30-second bits, shank size. So you can get all kinds of different bits to go with these. But if you just buy the set as it is, they all come with this. These should be plenty. And if you get the Aeromax one, then you get these. If they could only just combine these two together, I would be extremely happy. But I wanted to try this one out too. So now the Aeromax, so this sits right in the case. The difference with the Aeromax is that you have to hold on to the bottom part of the shank, and then you have to make sure the top part is loose, and then you put it in there, and then you have to tighten the top part. So the only thing that I could see that there would be a problem with this is if you you didn't have very good mobility with your fingers, like if you're older or younger and you have arthritis in your fingers, I think you would have a little bit harder time because you have to kind of pinch this and hold it to open up and pull out the bit. The other thing, here, I'll just put another one in. The other thing, see, and then you kind of have to loosen it, and then you put it back in. And one time, this kind of got stuck a little bit, so you got to be careful how tight you get that. The other thing that I don't care for as much is, this is really hard to see, but the power button is on this button, and the speed button is on this one, but it's actually reversed. I don't know what happened there, and I haven't asked them that. But so when I first got it, I thought it was busted, and I was going to, return it. But so you have to hold this down, and when you hold it down, it turns on. And this one pen, I think this is a neat feature, is that you can reverse direction of how the bit rotates. So right now it's rotating in the normal clockwise direction, okay? And to change the speeds, you use this button. So now I'm at 30,000, 15,000, 20, and 25, and 30. So regardless of what speed you have it on, you have to hold this down. So you hold it down and you press it, and it reverses and goes the other direction. So now it's rotating this direction. So there's a little bit more of a, I'm not even going to say this is a learning curve. And I'll press it one more time so you can see this. Now it's going to turn back that way. But it's just kind of a lot when you're trying to use it like a pencil and do things. You really have to stop and think about what you're doing. And then again, to turn it off, you hold it and it turns off. Now, the difference in how the Resparked uses the USB port, this, and I'm going to undo this, take it out. And I don't think this is as big of a deal, but I've noticed unless you set your charger on it correctly, it can get knocked and then it can stop charging. But the nice thing is, so you can put it away, you can put it back in your case, and you can stick it in the case. So you push back in, and then you just put it right there, but you have to make sure that it's set correctly in there. And then it will charge in the case. And then, of course, typical regular USB, and you just plug it in. I had knocked it the first time I did it, or I didn't have it set in there right, and it wasn't charging. So is that really a big deal? I don't think so. But if you really search around, you can pretty much find them close to the same price. And again, the only difference with this versus the Resparked is that you get sanding tips. But really the only sanding tips I would be using, and I've tried them, on the peach right there, is this one or this one. The rest of them are they won't really pick up watercolor paint off your paper. And this one, these are just felt so that you can polish things. But the nifty thing about this one is that you can use it for other things. Same here. Now, this brand did not come with the carbide bit, whereas the Resparked came with the carbide bit. I have found that the carbide bit is the best for pulling out lines like veins or hairs on a poppy, or like I was showing you the thistle. So that's another difference. This one, I feel like it needs the carbide bit. So what you have to do is you have to buy, and here I bought a set, you have to buy a separate set of carbide bits. And I think they run around $16, the ones that I found. So I don't know. For this one, I feel like you need the carbide bits, and I'm not too thrilled about all the buttons. So if you have to buy the carbide bits, it ends up being the same price really as the Resparked brand. The one difference with the Resparked brand is it doesn't go it doesn't have a high of speed. Let me rephrase that. It does not have as high of a speed as the Aeromax does. Is that a big deal? No, I don't think so. Now, all this being said, you can actually go online, and I put a link, in the info section. There aren't just the Resparked and the Aeromax. I just happen to know that these are two really good, solid brands. But if you just put in the link, if you go to Amazon, you're going to find just a ton of companies that are selling these now. So I think you can get them as low as $25. So they're pretty reasonable. For me, because this is how I earn my living. I teach. I want to make sure that I have a good brand, and I'm going to be using it all the time. And I want to make sure that it's sturdy and it's not going to just break down on me on a year. So for me, it was worth paying just a little bit more. But really, in the end, the only other difference between both pens is this one's a little bit longer, and you have to keep your finger back from the shank. One time I didn't, and I tend to hold my my pens, pencils, and my paintbrushes a lot differently than most people. So it kind of slipped a little bit and it burned this, the shank burnt my finger. So I'm not saying that that's, if you're just careful with it, you'll be fine. This one I've never had a problem with it. So this one's a little bit longer. They're both metal. This one's metal. This one's metal. There's not any cheap plastic parts on them. This one's just a little bit longer, but they both weigh exactly the same weight. This one probably might feel more like a pen in your hand, where this one is a little bit rounder. Does that matter? I don't think it does. But again, I have both of them and I like them both and I've been using them both. And, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a little bit more compact, and I'm just going to pick out the bits that I use. Some of these are kind of useless unless you're doing metal, stone, glass work, but these long ones, they don't really do anything on the surface of the paper. So, a lot of these bits, so I'm going to change them around. I'm going to take them all and kind of combine them into a set that I want. And then if I, for some reason, need to switch between the two, I can. But so there you go. That's how you use an engraving pen. And again, you can get great effects. And I probably didn't talk enough about this, but this to me is an absolute game changer. I get so tired, and I used to be so tired of using masking fluid, and that's why I switched to the Dremel tool. But the Dremel tool, even though it was cordless, is kind of bulky. But, and if you've ever painted and you buy masking fluid and it sits around for a couple months till you use it again, it gets clumpy and gooey, and sometimes it doesn't work well on some papers. Some of them, will lift lines. So if I can avoid using masking fluid, I will. And I got to tell you, I didn't even mask out the little veins. I used the Dremel tool just to get those in. I used the Dremel tool to pick out some little highlights. And of course, as I was showing earlier, all the beautiful sanding that you can do. And this one, my gosh, I don't even know how I would have been able to do it without these engraving pens. One thing I really liked was I was able to make the cobwebby fibers that are on the seed head without having to get out, a one hair brush and brush on masking fluid. So I really love these. They are worth the investment if you paint a lot. And anything that you can avoid using masking fluid with, I'm all for it. So that's my take on these two brands of engraving tools, and I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.